Hi, my name is Key Lee, Senior Vice President at Booz Allen in our Army market.
And I'm Jeanine Parker, a Vice President in our Army account.
Jeanine, I'm really excited about talking about one of our favorite topics, which is about accelerating digital transformation in the U.S. Army. I think they're doing a massive disruption. When I think about digital transformation, I think most people think about the technology, right? The cloud, the software, the data, and AI. But when I think about transformation, I think there's some core tenets. First of all, it's around modular open systems approach. Not necessarily the architecture, but the approach. The thoughtfulness for developing reusable components and moving away from vertically integrated to horizontally orchestrated. I think the second thing is in around this culture, the culture of reuse. Because when I think about technology, that half-life of IT is compressing so quickly. Back in the day, right, what used to take 10 years, Jeanine, like you and I have gone through, it's taking weeks, right? So collaborating with not only internally within Booz Allen, but actually across the entire ecosystem with industry partners and so forth, right? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we talk a lot about the Army disrupting itself and really looking at changing technology, how they buy technology, how they employ technology, but thinking about the reason they're doing it. It's fascinating to me to think about everything that's at the front lines, everything that we use to support relies on technology, relies on data, and how do you adjust the systems to be able to go at the speed that the mission requires? And I think that it's going to take that disruption that I've heard you talk about so many times, and thinking about the way that the requirements are generated today is different. The way that we field things is different, and it's not like the way it used to be, where we could take something offline, fully test, put things in place, and have a deployment schedule. The deployments are constant, and we can't take things offline. So thinking about how do we truly modernize the way that software is developed and deployed in the Army.
You and I have been at Booz for quite some time, and I think one of our special sauces has always been the intersection of our mission and domain expertise along with the technology. I think it's more relevant, even more relevant today than it has ever been. You've talked a lot about mission outcomes, and I think it's really critical because at the end of the day, that's what we want to focus on, right? We want to focus on those mission outcomes. And when we think about it, and as we've engaged with our clients, the thing that I hear a lot from them is I think they need agility. I think they want agility. And when I think about agility, it's about both speed and flexibility. Any thoughts and reactions to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And I think we hear a lot about agile, right? And agile software, but at the heart of it, I think it's not just the mechanisms and the processes to make agile happen. It's why are you doing it? And it's what you're talking about, right? It's agile, the agility, the speed, being able to bring in what you need at the right time and be able to accelerate how fast you can get it to the end users.
Yeah, let's break that apart. So speed and flexibility. I talked about MOSA. One of the things that I think we need to help and encourage is a lot of people talking about APIs. I think we've got to be very careful with that because just because you have an API doesn't mean that you have an open system. I think we got to get much more discreet about defining the fact that those APIs has to be either government owned or industry standardized. That way, the government can really allow this plug and play and this orchestration model. From a flexibility perspective, Jeanine, your thoughts on kind of how agile and how we can help the government with that?
One of the things that the government's really going to need is the best of industry to come together. And in order to do that, I think we have to think about different ways to collaborate and to team. I think we need to think about how we can leverage vendors and their products. And one of the basic things is how are all the pieces going to fit together? So, I mean, I think that the open architecture is one step. I think we've talked a lot about what needs to happen at the data level, right? How are you going to allow the data to be accessible, recognizable, be able to pull it together to answer what's being asked? So I think it's going to be integration and collaboration at a level that we haven't really had to do to this point.
I'm glad you brought up data. I think you and I could probably talk hours on data based on our prior experiences. One of the things that I'm really excited about what the U.S. Army is doing is this movement to decentralized. I think these data products and defining those data products to be reused by the entire Army enterprise is really interesting. Again, I think based on our mission experience and expertise, we can be advocates and evangelists of developing these reusable data products. I know that under your portfolio, the Army Data Catalog is there. I think it's a critical keystone to the entire data ecosystem. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Certainly. I mean, I think there's going to be reuse in some of the models, definitely reuse in some of the dashboarding capabilities. I think in order to get to that point, we've got to have those standards in place, and the standards need to be something that can be referenced and reached out to. And I think the ideas around how the data catalog will be developed, how it will be leveraged in order to have that consistency, that's going to be so critical if we really do want to be able to reuse some of the products.
Based on the unified data reference architecture and kind of the intent that they've actually conveyed, the U.S. Army has conveyed, I think we have an opportunity to kind of re-envision that Army data catalog, modeling the internet into what I'll call the data DNS. And I think it's kind of a exciting time because that's a very disruptive way to think about data. I want to get your thoughts on agile. You and I have talked about this quite a bit. Partnering with our colleagues down in Charleston and our Charleston hub there, where they're really delivering agile at scale. Your thoughts on how we can kind of help the U.S. Army through that, because they're going through massive software modernization as well.
When we think about our digital hub down in Charleston and what they've been able to develop, it's taken time to get there, and I think the investment that's needed for the Army and for us to support the Army is very similar. We'll be able to leverage a lot of the lessons learned, and I think be able to pull in those capabilities and some of the resources to teach and train. And I think that's going to be key to what the Army needs as well. So this is a different way to think about developing software and to be able to have the right product and project leads at the various levels throughout the government is going to be an important element to the success. So leveraging, again, what we've got and figuring out how to team with the Army to deliver what they need and supplement where there may be some deficiencies in training and capability among the team.
Yeah, certainly our colleagues have shown how they can scale the workforce, supporting Agile at scale across 48 continental United States in a very distributed fashion while maintaining velocity and quality. I think one of the things that we learned down there is their product line management approach as it relates to Agile. I think it aligns to how you always talked about outcomes. Can you kind of go into a little bit of details of that and your thoughts on that?
The Digital Hub down in Charleston has done such a great job of creating this product line management process, which I really think is what the Army could consider doing as well. There's just such success in being able to measure outcomes at the various levels, whether it's at the portfolio level, the product line, down to individual Agile team outcomes. Being able to measure the outcomes at a lower level as well as at that higher level allows you to tie it to mission and really shows the impact, allowing the government to measure the consultants and contractors that are supporting Agile, but also allowing us, as we're developing, to measure the successes, see where there may be challenges, and be able to react to that more rapidly.
So Jeanine, as you said, this product line management approach, I think is valued to the government because it's actually a risk mitigator, because they can actually have measurable outcomes, as you said. And I think it's also a win for industry because we can actually deliver against a product or a product line and actually deliver those outcomes, because we want to be delivering mission outcomes, not delivering capacity.
I agree. I mean, I think the idea of having outcomes and being able to measure how you're doing towards those outcomes at the various levels, whether it's at the portfolio, the product level, or the individual Agile team, lets us kind of course correct. To your point, I think it does reduce risk for the Army. I think it also really helps probably from an efficiency and a cost effectiveness standpoint because it'll encourage reuse. When you have some of the common elements together in a product line, it'll allow for leveraging different portions of the team, different agile teams to be able to reach that success and that outcome. Also across product lines, right at that portfolio level where the reuse can occur when you again have things organized into products. Well, Key, it's been wonderful talking about this. I mean, there's so much to do. It's an exciting time to be, supporting the Army. And I think at the end of the day, we know that data and technology are important, but it's really mission first, right? How do we support the mission? How do we help advance the needs of the Army? So look forward to continuing to work in this space with you.
Yeah, great dialogue. Thanks.